The illusion of natural sleep. Tonight, you're lying in your comfortable bed, temperature-controlled room set to a perfect 68 degrees Fahrenheit, on a mattress designed by sleep scientists, with blackout curtains ensuring complete darkness. Your phone is on silent, your doors are locked, and you're about to enjoy 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep. This scenario, which many of us take for granted or even struggle to achieve, would have been absolutely incomprehensible to 99.9% of all humans who have ever lived. In fact, what we consider normal sleep today is actually one of humanity's most remarkable and recent achievements, a modern miracle that our ancestors could never have imagined. The story of human sleep is not a peaceful one. It's a tale of survival, fear, innovation, and ultimately triumph over the forces that have kept our species sleep-deprived for hundreds of thousands of years. Today, we're going to journey through time to understand why sleeping 8 continuous hours is not natural at all. It's a hard-won victory against nature itself, and one that most of humanity still hasn't fully achieved. We'll discover how our ancestors slept in trees, caves, and hostile environments where closing both eyes meant death. We'll explore how the invention of walls, locks, and artificial light revolutionized human consciousness, and we'll reveal why your ability to sleep through the night is actually a superpower that would have made you seem godlike to prehistoric humans. The evolutionary paradox of sleep. Let's start with a fundamental question that has puzzled evolutionary biologists for decades. Why do we sleep at all? From a survival perspective, sleep is absolutely insane. Think about it. For 8 hours every day, we become unconscious, paralyzed, defenseless, and completely vulnerable to predators. We can't hunt, we can't gather food, we can't reproduce, and we can't protect ourselves or our offspring. Any species that developed this trait should have been immediately eaten into extinction. Yet every single mammal sleeps, and humans need more sleep than most. This is what scientists call the evolutionary paradox of sleep. The answer lies in understanding that sleep must provide benefits so crucial that they outweigh the massive survival risks. Modern neuroscience has revealed that during sleep, our brains perform critical maintenance functions that simply cannot occur while we're awake. The glymphatic system, discovered only in 2012, shows that during deep sleep, cerebrospinal fluid literally washes through our brain tissue, clearing out metabolic waste products, including the beta-amyloid proteins associated with Alzheimer's disease. Our brains consolidate memories, transferring information from temporary storage in the hippocampus to permanent storage in the cortex. Synaptic connections are pruned and strengthened, essentially defragmenting our neural hard drives. Without adequate sleep, these processes fail, leading to cognitive decline, emotional instability, and eventually, death. But here's the crucial point. Evolution didn't design us to get these benefits in one convenient 8-hour block. That would have been suicidal for early humans. Instead, our ancestors developed what researchers call polyphasic sleep patterns, multiple short periods of light sleep throughout a 24-hour period, always with one ear open, always ready to spring into action. The 8-hour monophasic sleep pattern we consider normal today is not our natural state. It's a luxury that required thousands of years of technological and social development to achieve. Life in the trees, humanity's original bedroom. To understand how radically different ancient sleep was from modern sleep, we need to go back to our very earliest ancestors, the Australopithecines, who lived between 4 and 2 million years ago. These early hominins spent their nights in the trees of African forests and woodlands, and their sleep patterns were dictated entirely by the harsh realities of predation. Imagine trying to sleep while balanced on a tree branch 30 feet above the ground, surrounded by leopards, hyenas, and other nocturnal predators that could climb. This was humanity's bedroom for millions of years. Recent studies of chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, provide insights into how our ancestors likely slept. Chimps spend about 10 minutes each evening building elaborate sleeping nests in trees, carefully selecting branches that can support their weight and weaving them together to create a stable platform. But even in these nests, chimps sleep fitfully, averaging only about 7 hours of very light sleep with frequent awakenings. They maintain what's called vigilant sleep, a state where part of the brain remains active and alert to danger. Every rustle of leaves, every snapping twig, triggers an immediate awakening and assessment of threat level. For our early ancestors, the situation was even more precarious. As we evolved to walk upright, we lost many of the adaptations that made our ape ancestors comfortable in trees. Our feet transformed from grasping appendages to walking platforms. Our arms shortened relative to our bodies. Our center of gravity shifted. These changes made us better walkers and runners, but terrible tree sleepers. Archaeological evidence suggests that many early hominins suffered from broken bones, consistent with falls from height, likely the result of falling from sleeping platforms. The price of a good night's sleep could literally be death or permanent injury. The cognitive load of arboreal sleeping was enormous. Early humans couldn't simply pass out from exhaustion. They had to maintain enough consciousness to keep their balance, adjust their position, and respond to threats. This meant they never entered the deep, restorative stages of sleep that modern humans enjoy. They existed in a perpetual state of sleep deprivation that we would consider torturous today. Studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies, who still occasionally sleep in trees for safety, show elevated stress hormones, reduced immune function, and decreased cognitive performance compared to ground sleeping. Yet this was the only option for millions of years of human evolution. The ground revolution, humanity's first sleep innovation. Approximately 1.8 million years ago, something revolutionary happened in human evolution. Homo erectus began sleeping on the ground. This might seem like a small change, but it was actually one of the most important transitions in human history, fundamentally altering our species' relationship with sleep and consciousness. The move from trees to terra firma didn't happen because the ground was safer, quite the opposite. The African savanna floor was arguably more dangerous than the trees, crawling with predators, venomous snakes, scorpions, and disease-carrying insects. So why make the switch? The answer lies in two critical innovations: the control of fire and the development of social sleeping. Fire, which Homo erectus began using regularly around 1.5 million years ago, created a bubble of safety in the dangerous night. It provided light to see approaching threats, heat to survive cold nights, smoke to repel insects, and most importantly, a psychological barrier that most predators were unwilling to cross. Archaeological sites from this period show evidence of hearths surrounded by sleeping areas, suggesting that early humans clustered around fires in social groups for protection. But fire alone wasn't enough. The real game changer was the development of what anthropologists call sentinel behavior, coordinated group sleeping, where individuals took turns staying awake to watch for danger. This required sophisticated social cooperation and communication that only humans possessed. Modern studies of hunter-gatherer societies, like the Hadza of Tanzania, show this ancient pattern still in action. In a typical night, At least one adult is awake at any given time, creating a continuous watch system. The sentinels don't need to be formally assigned. Natural variation in chronotypes, whether someone is a night owl or early bird, ensures coverage throughout the night. This social sleeping arrangement had profound implications for human evolution. For the first time, some individuals could enter deeper stages of sleep while others kept watch. This allowed for the cognitive benefits of REM sleep and deep slow wave sleep to fully manifest. Brain size in human ancestors shows a notable increase after the adoption of ground sleeping, suggesting that better sleep quality may have driven the evolution of human intelligence. The ground sleepers who could best utilize these deeper sleep stages for memory consolidation and problem solving had survival advantages, passing on their genes and gradually shifting humanity toward needing and expecting better sleep quality. However, ground sleeping came with its own horrific challenges. Without the natural elevation of trees, early humans were exposed to a whole new category of threats. Parasites and pathogens thrived in sleeping sites. Predators could approach from any direction. Weather became a major factor. Rain, cold, and wind could be deadly without proper shelter. The archaeological record from this period is littered with evidence of nighttime predation on early human groups. Tooth marks on hominin bones, drag patterns leading from sleeping sites, and the remains of humans found in predator dens all tell the story of nights filled with terror. The predator problem, when darkness meant death. To truly appreciate why 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep is a modern miracle, we need to understand the sheer scale of the predator problem faced by our ancestors. The African savanna of the Pleistocene epoch was not the relatively tame ecosystem we see today. It was a killing field populated by predators that specifically evolved to hunt primates, including humans. These weren't just lions and leopards, though those were certainly threats. The roster of human hunters included saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, pack-hunting dogs, crocodiles, and even giant eagles capable of carrying off children. Consider Dinofelis, the terrible cat, a specialized primate hunter that existed alongside early humans for over 1 million years. Paleontological evidence suggests this leopard-sized predator specifically targeted Australopithecines, an early Homo species. Its teeth and claws were perfectly adapted for crushing primate skulls, and its remains are often found alongside hominin fossils. Unlike modern leopards that occasionally take humans opportunistically, Dinofelis appears to have been a dedicated human hunter, active primarily at night when our ancestors were most vulnerable. The psychological impact of living under constant predation cannot be overstated. Modern humans who experience a single predator encounter often develop lifelong PTSD. Our ancestors lived every single night under threat of attack. Children grew up hearing the screams of family members being dragged into the darkness. The night sounds of Africa, the roar of lions, the whooping of hyenas, the cough of leopards triggered immediate stress responses that made deep sleep impossible. Studies of modern populations living in areas with man-eating predators show severe sleep disruption, with people averaging less than 4 hours of fitful sleep per night during high-threat periods. The physiological adaptations to this predator-rich environment are still visible in modern humans. Our startle response, where sudden noises cause immediate awakening and adrenaline surge, evolved as an anti-predator mechanism. The hypnic jerk, that falling sensation that sometimes wakes us as we're drifting off to sleep, may be a vestigial reflex from our tree-dwelling days, designed to prevent us from falling out of sleeping nests. Our ability to achieve REM sleep in short bursts, rather than long continuous periods, allowed our ancestors to dream and consolidate memories while maintaining the ability to wake quickly when threatened. Even our sleep architecture bears the scars of predation. Humans have an unusually high proportion of REM sleep occurring in the last third of the night, toward dawn. This pattern, unique among primates, may have evolved because dawn was the safest time to enter vulnerable REM states. Predators had often made their kills by then, and increasing daylight provided better threat detection. The fact that we still maintain this pattern millions of years after the predator threat diminished shows how deeply the fear of nighttime death is embedded in our biology. The cave era, humanity's first bedrooms. Around 300,000 years ago, early humans made another revolutionary discovery that would transform sleep. Caves. These natural shelters provided something unprecedented in human history. Walls. For the first time, humans could put solid barriers between themselves and the terrors of the night. Archaeological evidence from sites like Kesem Cave in Israel and Wonderwork Cave in South Africa shows that humans didn't just occasionally use caves for shelter. They transformed them into the world's first permanent bedrooms, occupied continuously for thousands of years. But caves weren't the paradise of safety we might imagine. They came with their own unique horrors that replaced the fear of predation with new nightmares. Cave bears, massive beasts weighing up to 1,000 pounds, competed with humans for these shelters and would attack groups attempting to evict them. The bones of cave bears and humans are often found mixed together in archaeological sites, testimony to brutal battles for sleeping space. Even when humans successfully claimed a cave, they had to share it with bats, whose guano carried deadly histoplasmosis, and cave spiders, scorpions, and snakes that thrived in the dark recesses. The air quality in caves was often deadly. Carbon dioxide from human respiration and fires could accumulate in poorly ventilated chambers, causing headaches, confusion, and eventually death. Carbon monoxide from fires was an even more insidious killer, silently poisoning sleeping groups. Many caves show evidence of sudden abandonment, with valuable tools and resources left behind, suggesting that toxic air events forced rapid evacuations. The choice of which cave to inhabit and where within it to sleep became a complex calculation balancing safety from external threats against internal hazards. Yet despite these dangers, caves provided something invaluable: consistent sleep schedules. The deep darkness of inner caves created the first truly dark sleeping environments, allowing human circadian rhythms to stabilize. Studies of modern humans living in caves for extended periods show that without artificial light, people naturally develop biphasic sleep patterns, two distinct sleep periods separated by a period of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night. This pattern, which historians now believe was the dominant human sleep pattern until the Industrial Revolution, allowed for better sleep quality than the fragmented sleep of our tree and ground-dwelling ancestors. Cave sleeping also enabled the development of sleep culture and technology. Archaeological evidence shows that cave-dwelling humans created the first beds, shallow pits filled with grass and leaves, sometimes lined with ash to repel insects. They developed sleeping positions and arrangements, with evidence suggesting that family groups slept together for warmth and protection, while sentinels positioned themselves near cave entrances. The famous cave of Altamira in Spain even shows evidence of designated sleeping chambers, separate from living and cooking areas, the first bedrooms in human history. The discovery of biphasic sleep, our natural rhythm. One of the most shocking revelations about pre-modern sleep comes from historian Roger Eckert's groundbreaking research into historical sleep patterns. By analyzing thousands of historical documents, from medieval prayer books to court records, from medical texts to personal diaries, Eckert discovered something remarkable. Before the Industrial Revolution, humans didn't sleep in one 8-hour block. Instead, they practiced what's called biphasic, or segmented sleep, two distinct sleep periods of about 4 hours each, separated by 1 to 2 hours of wakefulness in the middle of the night. This pattern was so universal that people had specific terms for it. The first sleep was called first sleep, or dead sleep, beginning shortly after darkness fell. People would then wake naturally around midnight, spending the intervening hours in various activities. They might pray, meditate, talk with bedfellows, have sex, or simply lie quietly in contemplation. This period was called the watching or the wake and was considered a normal, even special time. Then came second sleep or morning sleep, which lasted until dawn. References to this pattern are found in virtually every pre-industrial society, from Africa to Asia, Europe to the Americas. The biological basis for biphasic sleep is still visible in modern humans when we remove artificial light. Studies where people live without electric light for extended periods show that they naturally revert to this ancestral pattern within a few weeks. The midnight waking period is characterized by elevated levels of prolactin, the same hormone that makes us feel peaceful and satisfied after sex. Historical accounts describe this time as uniquely peaceful and creative, when people felt closest to the divine or had their most profound insights. Some researchers believe this quiet, wakeful period was crucial for processing the day's experiences and planning for tomorrow, a kind of conscious dreaming that we've lost in our modern rush to sleep straight through the night. The implications of this discovery are profound. Many of our modern sleep disorders may actually be our bodies attempting to return to this natural pattern. Middle-of-the-night insomnia, which affects millions of people, might not be a disorder at all, but rather a vestigial expression of our biphasic heritage. When people wake at 2 or 3 a.m. and can't fall back asleep, they're experiencing what was once a normal, healthy part of human sleep. The anxiety we feel about these wakings, the clock watching, the worry about tomorrow's performance, the desperate attempts to force ourselves back to sleep, is entirely modern. Our ancestors would have simply accepted this wakeful period as natural as breathing. But why did biphasic sleep evolve in the first place? The answer likely relates to both safety and social bonding. The midnight waking ensured that someone in the group was always semi-alert, providing continuous sentinel coverage without requiring anyone to stay fully awake all night. It also provided a private time for couples to bond and reproduce. Historical records show that most conceptions occurred during the watching period. The darkness and quiet of these hours created an intimate space that daylight hours, filled with survival activities, couldn't provide. This pattern was so deeply ingrained that it persisted for thousands of years after the immediate predator threats diminished, only disappearing with the arrival of artificial light. Chapter 2: The Agricultural Revolution and the Birth of Bedroom Culture. From Nomad to Homeowner, the First Private Bedroom. The Neolithic Revolution, beginning around 12,000 years ago, didn't just change how humans obtained food, it fundamentally transformed how we slept. For the first time in human history, people stayed in one place long enough to build permanent structures with dedicated sleeping spaces. The transition from nomadic hunter-gatherer to sedentary farmer created the conditions for what we might recognize as the first real bedrooms. Archaeological sites like Çatalhöyük in Turkey, dating from 7500 BCE, reveal sophisticated sleeping arrangements that would have seemed impossibly luxurious to our nomadic ancestors. These early permanent dwellings featured raised sleeping platforms built from mud brick and plaster, elevated about 30 centimeters above the floor. This elevation served multiple purposes. It kept sleepers away from insects and rodents, provided insulation from cold ground, and created a psychological separation between sleeping and living spaces. The platforms were often built against walls and in corners, maximizing the feeling of security, an architectural choice that persists in bedroom design today. Some platforms show evidence of reed mats and textile coverings, the ancestors of our modern mattresses and sheets. But permanent settlements brought new sleep challenges that replaced old ones. Living in close proximity to domesticated animals meant exposure to zoonotic diseases that thrived in sedentary populations. Tuberculosis, likely transmitted from cattle, became endemic in early agricultural societies, causing night sweats, coughing, and severely disrupted sleep. Parasites like bedbugs, lice, and fleas, which had previously been left behind when nomadic groups moved camp, now became permanent sleeping companions. The archaeological record shows that early farmers actually had worse health and shorter lifespans than hunter-gatherers, partly due to disease, but also due to poorer sleep quality from overcrowding and infection. The social dynamics of agricultural sleep were completely different from anything humanity had experienced before. Extended families of 20-30 people might share a single dwelling, with multiple generations sleeping in the same room. Privacy was non-existent. Sexual activity, illness, nightmares, snoring, all were communal experiences. Children grew up witnessing every aspect of adult life, including death, which often occurred in the family sleeping space. This complete lack of privacy might seem horrific to modern sensibilities, but it provided safety in numbers and ensured that no one suffered alone in the dark. The development of private sleeping spaces was gradual and directly correlated with wealth and status. The first individual bedrooms appear in Mesopotamian palaces around 3000 BCE, reserved exclusively for royalty. These rooms featured not just beds, but also the first bedroom furniture, storage chests for clothing, stands for oil lamps, and even primitive climate control in the form of slaves who would fan the sleeper throughout the night. For the elite, sleep became not just about rest, but about displaying wealth and power. Gilgamesh, the legendary Sumerian king, was said to have a bed made of precious woods and gold, elevated on a platform that required steps to reach a height that symbolically and literally elevated him above common humanity. The invention of the bed, from ground to elevation, to compare epso. The evolution of the bed is really the story of humanity's gradual escape from the ground and all its associated dangers. The first true beds, as opposed to sleeping mats or furs, appeared in Egypt around 3100 BCE. These were remarkable pieces of engineering that addressed specific sleep problems that had plagued humanity for millennia. Egyptian beds featured wooden frames with legs that raised the sleeping surface about 30 centimeters off the ground, leather or rope webbing for support, and most ingeniously, legs that sat in bowls of water to prevent insects from climbing up. The Egyptian bed was more than furniture. It was a technology that transformed sleep quality. The elevation provided multiple benefits: improved air circulation, reduced the buildup of carbon dioxide around the sleeper's face. Distance from the ground meant fewer encounters with scorpions and snakes, and the flexibility of the webbing reduced pressure points that caused discomfort on hard surfaces. Wealthy Egyptians even had adjustable headrests made of wood or stone, designed to keep elaborate hairstyles intact and promote airflow around the head on hot nights. These might seem uncomfortable to us, but they represented a massive improvement over sleeping on bare ground. The Romans took bed technology to new extremes, creating specialized beds for different purposes. The lectus cubicularis was for sleeping, the lectus genialis for marriage ceremonies, and the lectus lucubratorius for studying. Roman beds were status symbols, with the wealthy displaying beds made of precious woods inlaid with ivory, gold, and silver. They developed the first spring-like systems using bronze or iron strips to provide flexible support. The Romans also invented the first heated beds, with some featuring hollow spaces underneath where hot coals could be placed, a luxury that wouldn't be widely available again until the invention of electric blankets in the 20th century. But the most significant Roman contribution to sleep culture was the cubiculum, the private bedroom. Wealthy Roman homes featured multiple cubicula, allowing family members to sleep separately for the first time in human history. These rooms were small, windowless chambers designed specifically for sleeping, often painted with peaceful scenes or trompe-l'oeil windows to create the illusion of space. The Romans understood that environment affected sleep quality and designed their cubicula accordingly, with thick walls for sound insulation and positioning away from busy streets. The fall of Rome brought a dramatic regression in sleep comfort for most Europeans. The elaborate beds of antiquity disappeared, replaced by simple straw pallets on the floor. Medieval peasants often slept on bags filled with straw, hay, or even bean pods, which had to be regularly replaced as they became infested with vermin. The phrase "hitting the hay" comes from the practice of literally beating these mattresses to drive out insects before sleeping. For centuries, the average European slept in conditions that would have appalled a Roman citizen of modest means. The medieval Great Hall represents one of history's most dramatic changes in sleeping arrangements. In castles and manor houses, nearly everyone except the lord and lady slept together in one large room. Servants, soldiers, guests, and even animals shared the same space, with people sleeping on benches along the walls or directly on the rush-covered floor. Privacy was indicated by curtains or screens, but sound carried freely. This communal sleeping wasn't just about poverty or lack of space, it was a defensive strategy. In an age of constant warfare, concentrating people in one fortified room provided better protection than scattered individual chambers. Sleeping with strangers, the medieval Great Hall. The medieval Great Hall sleeping arrangement seems almost incomprehensible to modern sensibilities, yet it dominated European sleep culture for nearly 1,000 years. Imagine a vast stone room, perhaps 20 meters long and 10 meters wide, dimly lit by a dying fire in the central hearth. The air is thick with smoke, the smell of unwashed bodies, and the lingering aroma of the evening meal. As darkness falls, 30 to 50 people prepare for sleep. Nobles, servants, visitors, guards, and often dogs that provide both warmth and protection. This was the nightly reality for most medieval Europeans. The sleeping positions in the Great Hall were strictly hierarchical. The lord and lady might have a curtained bed at one end, slightly elevated on a dais. High-ranking guests received spots closest to the fire. Servants and lower-status individuals slept progressively farther from heat sources, with the lowest-ranking sleeping near the doors, the coldest and most dangerous positions. Everyone slept fully clothed, partly for warmth but also for modesty and the ability to respond quickly to nighttime emergencies. Night clothes were a luxury only the wealthy could afford, and even then, They were more about display than comfort. The sounds of a medieval night were cacophonous: snoring, coughing, talking in sleep, crying children, copulating couples trying to be discreet, guards changing shifts, dogs barking at real or imagined threats, and the ever-present scratching and squeaking of rats in the walls. Private conversations were impossible. Every whispered secret, every prayer, every intimate moment was potentially public. Yet people adapted to these conditions, developing what historians call selective deafness, the ability to psychologically tune out familiar nighttime sounds while remaining alert to unusual ones that might signal danger. The lack of privacy extended to the most intimate human functions. Chamber pots were used openly, their contents often thrown from windows with a shouted warning of "garde à l'eau," watch out for water, which became corrupted into the English loo. Sexual activity between married couples occurred behind bed curtains if they were lucky enough to have them, or simply under covers with others pretending not to notice. Young people's sexual education came not from talks with parents, but from unavoidable observation of adult behavior. This complete lack of privacy shaped medieval psychology in ways we can barely comprehend, creating a society where individual identity was always subsumed within the group. Fire was both savior and constant threat in these arrangements. The central hearth provided essential warmth and light, but also filled the hall with smoke that caused respiratory problems and made eyes water. Sparks could ignite the straw-covered floors or wooden beams, turning the hall into a death trap. Night watches were maintained not just for external threats, but to tend the fire and watch for signs of combustion. The number of medieval buildings that burned down during the night, often killing everyone inside, is testament to this constant danger. Yet without fire, winter nights would have been lethal, forcing people to choose between the risk of burning and the certainty of freezing. The Black Death, when sleep became deadly. The arrival of the Black Death in Europe in 1347 transformed sleep from a mere necessity into a potential death sentence. The plague, which killed between 30 to 60% of Europe's population, spread most efficiently in the crowded sleeping quarters that characterized medieval life. Fleas carrying the Yersinia pestis bacterium thrived in the warm, humid environment of communal sleeping spaces, jumping from person to person as they huddled together for warmth. The very act of sleeping near others, which had provided safety for millennia, suddenly became the primary vector for humanity's deadliest pandemic. Contemporary accounts describe the horror of plague nights. People would go to bed healthy and wake up with the characteristic buboes, painful, swollen lymph nodes that gave the Black Death its name. Or worse, they wouldn't wake up at all. Families would discover dead relatives in the morning, their bodies already beginning to decompose in the warmth of shared beds. The Italian writer Giovanni Boccaccio described how brother abandoned brother, uncle abandoned nephew, sister left brother, and very often wife abandoned husband. Even worse, and almost unbelievable, mothers and fathers abandoned their children, leaving them unvisited and uncared for as if they were strangers. The plague fundamentally changed European attitudes toward communal sleeping. Those who could afford it began isolating themselves, creating the first quarantine chambers, where potentially infected individuals were forced to sleep alone. The word quarantine itself comes from the Venetian practice of requiring ships to wait 40 days, quaranta giorni, before entering port, with crews sleeping aboard in isolation. Wealthy families began building separate bedchambers for family members, reasoning that isolation was worth the increased vulnerability to other threats if it meant avoiding plague. Sleep itself became suspect during plague outbreaks. Medical theories of the time suggested that sleep made the body more vulnerable to plague miasmas or bad air. People attempted to stay awake as long as possible, believing that consciousness could somehow ward off infection. When sleep became unavoidable, elaborate rituals were performed, windows were sealed with wax, aromatic herbs were burned, and prayers were recited continuously. Some wore special plague masks even while sleeping, believing the long beaks filled with aromatics would filter out deadly vapors. The psychological impact of plague on sleep patterns persisted for generations. The tradition of saying "God bless you" after someone sneezes originated from plague times, when a sneeze might signal impending death. Bedtime prayers took on new urgency. "Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take," wasn't just a children's rhyme, but a genuine nightly concern. The plague created a culture of death anxiety around sleep that wouldn't fully dissipate until the advent of modern medicine. Windows, doors, and locks. The security revolution. The development of secure windows, doors, and locks between the 14th and 17th centuries represents one of the most underappreciated revolutions in human sleep. For the first time in history, ordinary people could create truly private, secure sleeping spaces. This wasn't just about keeping out thieves and murderers. It was about creating the psychological safety necessary for deep restorative sleep. The ability to lock a door transformed sleep from a communal vulnerability into a private refuge. The evolution of lock technology directly paralleled improvements in sleep quality. Early medieval locks were simple wooden mechanisms that could be defeated by anyone with basic tools. By the 15th century, metal locks with complex ward systems became available to the merchant class. The invention of the pin tumbler lock in ancient Egypt had been lost to Europe but was reinvented during the Renaissance, providing security that actually worked. For the first time, a locked door meant something. People could sleep knowing that entry to their chamber required either permission or significant noise that would wake them. Windows underwent their own revolution. Early medieval buildings had either no windows or simple openings that could be covered with wooden shutters or oiled cloth. These provided minimal protection from elements and none from intruders. The development of glass windows, initially just for churches and palaces, gradually trickled down to merchant homes by the 16th century. Glass windows with iron bars or internal shutters created bedrooms that were simultaneously secure and illuminated by natural light, a combination that had never before existed in human history. The psychological impact of lockable private bedrooms cannot be overstated. For the first time, couples could be intimate without an audience. Individuals could sleep naked, improving temperature regulation and hygiene. Personal possessions could be safely stored in bedrooms rather than worn or hidden. The locked bedroom door created a boundary between public and private life that fundamentally changed human psychology. The concept of privacy, which we consider a basic human right, was literally born in the lockable bedroom. But this security came at a significant cost that created new class divisions. Locks, glass windows, and private bedrooms were expensive. The poor continued to sleep communally in unlocked spaces well into the 19th century. This created a sleep inequality that persists today. Quality sleep became a luxury good, available primarily to those who could afford security and privacy. The ability to sleep soundly behind locked doors became a marker of social status, dividing society into those who could afford to sleep safely and those who couldn't. The proliferation of locks also created new anxieties. The fear of being locked in during a fire replaced the fear of intruders. Skeleton keys and lock-picking became criminal specialties, creating an arms race between lock makers and lock breakers. The bedroom, once a communal space where threats were at least visible, became an isolated chamber where one might be trapped with an intruder. These new fears generated new sleep disturbances, the need to check and recheck locks, the startle at every small noise, the paranoia about whether windows were properly secured. The candle revolution, extending day into night. Before we can understand why artificial light revolutionized sleep, we need to grasp the absolute darkness that characterized pre-modern nights. Without moon or stars, a cloudy night was so dark that people literally could not see their hands in front of their faces. The darkness wasn't just inconvenient, it was terrifying and dangerous. People routinely walked into walls, fell down stairs, or became lost just meters from their own homes. The night belonged to criminals, predators, and supernatural fears. Then came the candle revolution, and everything changed. While candles had existed since ancient times, they were luxury items made from expensive beeswax that only the wealthy could afford. The development of tallow candles from animal fat in medieval Europe made artificial light somewhat more accessible, but they were still costly, smelly, and smoky. A typical working family might burn a single candle for an hour or two after sunset, extending their productive day slightly, but not fundamentally altering their sleep patterns. The real revolution came with the improvement of candle-making techniques in the 16th and 17th centuries, particularly the development of harder tallow that burned longer and the invention of braided wicks that didn't need constant trimming. Suddenly, the middle class could afford to light their homes for several hours after sunset. This seemingly small change had enormous consequences for sleep patterns. The sharp boundary between day and night began to blur. People could engage in evening activities, reading, socializing, working, that had been impossible in darkness. Bedtime became a choice rather than a necessity imposed by sunset. The natural circadian rhythm that had governed human sleep for millions of years began to break down. Humans were taking control of the night, and our biology struggled to keep up. The social implications of extended evening hours transformed society. Coffee houses and taverns stayed open late, creating the first nightlife culture. Evening entertainments, theater, concerts, gambling flourished. Literacy rates increased as people could read after their daytime work was done. But most significantly, the biphasic sleep pattern that had characterized human rest for millennia began to disappear. With activities to fill the evening hours, people began going to bed later and attempting to sleep through the night rather than in two segments. The first sleep and second sleep merged into a single block, creating the monophasic pattern we consider normal today. But candlelit evenings came with their own dangers that disrupted sleep in new ways. Candle fires were a constant threat. Knocked over candles started conflagrations that destroyed entire neighborhoods. London's Great Fire of 1666 began in a bakery where a candle ignited wooden beams. The fear of fire meant someone had to stay partially awake to monitor candles, or they had to be extinguished before sleep, returning the household to darkness. Many people developed elaborate bedtime rituals around candle safety, checking and rechecking that all flames were extinguished, a behavior that evolved into the modern compulsion to check locks and appliances before bed. The economic impact of candles on sleep was profound. A typical household might spend 5% of their income on candles, equivalent to spending hundreds of dollars monthly on lighting today. This created a cruel irony. The poor, who most needed extra evening hours to supplement their income with piecework, couldn't afford the candles to see by. They remained locked in the ancient pattern of sunset-determined sleep, while the wealthy could increasingly control their schedules. This illumination inequality created different sleep cultures within the same society, a division that would only intensify with the arrival of gas and electric lighting. Chapter 3: The Industrial Revolution, when humanity broke the night. Gaslights and factory bells, the death of natural sleep. The introduction of gaslighting in the early 19th century didn't just brighten streets and homes, it fundamentally severed humanity's ancient connection to natural light cycles. When gas lamps first illuminated Pall Mall in London in 1807, observers described the scene as magical and like walking in fairyland. Within decades, entire cities glowed throughout the night, creating what historians call the first true 24-hour societies. This wasn't just technological progress, it was biological revolution that our bodies are still struggling to process 2 centuries later. Gas lighting was dramatically cheaper and brighter than candles. A single gas jet provided the equivalent light of 10 candles at a fraction of the cost. For the first time in human history, ordinary people could afford to thoroughly light their homes after dark. Reading, sewing, and detailed work could continue deep into the night. The middle class developed evening life, a period of leisure and socialization that had never before existed. Dinner parties, evening visits, and nighttime shopping became possible. The concept of bedtime as a fixed point in the day began to dissolve, replaced by individual choice about when to sleep. But the real sleep revolution came with the factory bell. The Industrial Revolution didn't just change how people worked, it fundamentally altered when they slept. Pre-industrial workers had followed seasonal rhythms, working longer in summer and shorter in winter, taking breaks when tired, napping when needed. The factory system demanded something unprecedented: standardized sleep schedules. Workers had to arrive at specific times, regardless of season, weather, or personal circadian rhythms. The factory bell, ringing at 5 or 6 a.m., became the enemy of natural sleep, forcing millions to wake in darkness during winter months. The new industrial schedule created what researchers now call social jet lag, the misalignment between our biological clocks and social demands. Workers who might naturally sleep from midnight to 8 a.m. were forced to wake at 5 a.m. for 6 a.m. shifts. Night shift workers had it even worse, attempting to sleep during daylight hours in thin-walled industrial housing where noise was constant. Sleep deprivation became endemic. Industrial accidents soared during early morning and night shifts. Workers fell asleep at machines, losing fingers, hands, and lives. The human cost of breaking natural sleep patterns was literally written in blood and severed limbs. The response to widespread sleep deprivation was not to adjust schedules, but to pathologize tiredness. Workers who couldn't adapt to industrial schedules were labeled lazy, weak, or morally deficient. Falling asleep at work became grounds for immediate dismissal. Stimulants, first tobacco and alcohol, then patent medicines containing cocaine and amphetamines, became essential tools for maintaining industrial schedules. The coffee break wasn't invented for pleasure, but as a systematic way to drug workers into alertness. The modern addiction to caffeine is a direct result of industrial sleep schedules that ignore biological reality. Urban noise pollution added another layer to the industrial sleep crisis. Pre-industrial cities were noisy during the day, but relatively quiet at night. Industrial cities never slept. Factories ran 24-hour shifts, their machinery creating constant mechanical thunder. Steam engines, whistles, and bells punctuated the night. Horse-drawn wagons clattered over cobblestones at all hours, delivering materials and removing products. The industrial city created a sonic environment that made natural sleep nearly impossible. People adapted by learning to sleep through noise that would have meant mortal danger to their ancestors, a psychological adaptation that required overriding millions of years of evolution. The railroad timetable, when time zones murdered. Sleep before the railroad, every town kept its own time based on the sun's position. Noon was when the sun reached its highest point, which varied by location. This worked fine when the fastest travel was by horse, but when railroads began connecting cities in the 1840s, this temporal chaos became dangerous. Trains operating on different time systems collided. Passengers missed connections. The solution, standardized time zones, seemed logical, but it represented one of history's most profound disruptions to human sleep patterns. On November 18, 1883, known as the Day of Two Noons, railroad companies in North America synchronized their clocks, creating 4 standard time zones. Suddenly, millions of people's biological noon no longer matched clock noon. Cities on the eastern edge of time zones experienced sunset an hour earlier than their biology expected. Those on western edges saw darkness fall an hour later. This arbitrary reorganization of time meant that people's circadian rhythms, evolved over millions of years to follow the sun, were suddenly misaligned with social time. The impact on sleep was immediate and profound. The resistance to standard time was fierce, but futile. Newspapers called it railroad tyranny and an attempt to play God with time itself. Some cities refused to adopt railroad time, creating chaos where different clocks in the same city showed different times. Workers living on one side of a time zone boundary, but working on the other, experienced daily jet lag without traveling. The stress of constantly translating between natural time and railroad time created a new form of anxiety that disrupted sleep. People lay awake, calculating what time it really was versus what the clock claimed. The global standardization of time, formalized at the 1884 International Meridian Conference, exported this sleep disruption worldwide. Colonial powers imposed their time systems on territories that had functioned perfectly well with solar time. India, spanning 30 degrees of longitude, was forced into a single time zone, meaning sunrise and sunset could vary by 2 hours across the country. The biological impossibility of this arrangement continues to affect over 1 billion people's sleep today. China's decision to have a single time zone, despite spanning 5 geographical zones, means some citizens experience permanent jet lag, with social schedules completely disconnected from natural light. Time zones also created the phenomenon of daylight saving time, first widely implemented during World War I to save coal. This biannual disruption to sleep schedules, affecting billions of people, causes measurable increases in heart attacks, traffic accidents, and workplace injuries in the days following each change. Studies show it takes most people 3 to 4 days to adjust to the 1-hour change, during which sleep quality is significantly reduced. The economic cost of this disruption runs into billions of dollars annually, yet we continue the practice, prioritizing energy savings over biological health. Electric light, the final victory over darkness. When Thomas Edison's incandescent bulb began illuminating homes in the 1880s, humanity finally achieved what it had dreamed of for millennia: the complete conquest of darkness. Electric light wasn't just brighter and safer than gas, it was instant, controllable, and eventually ubiquitous. The switch that could banish darkness with a finger's touch was more than convenience, it was godlike power that fundamentally altered human consciousness. Within a single generation, the primal fear of darkness that had shaped human evolution simply disappeared. Edison himself embodied the new relationship with sleep that electric light enabled. He famously claimed to sleep only 4 hours per night, calling sleep a criminal waste of time and a heritage from our cave days. His Menlo Park laboratory was lit throughout the night, with researchers working in shifts around the clock. Edison's catnap system, multiple short sleeps on a cot in his office, became the model for the modern workaholic. He wasn't just selling light bulbs, he was selling a new ideology where sleep was the enemy of progress and prosperity. The electrification of cities proceeded at breathtaking pace. New York's Broadway became the Great White Way by 1890, its electric signs turning night into perpetual dusk. By 1925, half of American homes had electric light. By 1940, it was nearly universal in urban areas. Each newly electrified home represented a family freed from the tyranny of darkness and simultaneously disconnected from the natural light cycles that had regulated human biology since the beginning of time. The speed of this transition gave human biology no time to adapt. In evolutionary terms, it was instantaneous. Electric light's impact on sleep went far beyond simply extending wakeful hours. The spectrum of electric light, particularly the blue wavelengths that suppress melatonin production, told our brains it was perpetual noon. Previous artificial light sources, fire, candles, gas, produced warm, red-shifted light that had minimal impact on circadian rhythms. Electric incandescent bulbs and later fluorescent lights produced light rich in blue wavelengths that powerfully suppressed the hormones that induce sleep. For the first time, humans could create biological day at midnight. The psychological impact was equally profound. The bedroom, once a place of inevitable darkness, became a space of optional light. Children developed fear of darkness because they rarely experienced true darkness. Adults lost the ability to navigate in low light. The subtle gradations of dawn and dusk that had regulated human activity for millennia became irrelevant. Night became a social construct rather than a physical reality. The phrase burning the midnight oil became quaint. Now one simply flipped a switch and continued as if the sun had never set. But the most insidious effect of electric light was how it enabled the complete commercialization of night. Stores stayed open late, then 24 hours. Entertainment venues proliferated, movie theaters, dance halls, amusement parks, all requiring customers to sacrifice sleep for pleasure. The electric sign became capitalism's tool for colonizing the night, turning darkness into another market to be exploited. Times Square, Las Vegas, Tokyo's Ginza, these electric wonderlands trained humanity to see night as wasted unless it was productive or pleasurable. Sleep became the enemy of both profit and fun. The bedroom revolution, from shared spaces to private sanctuaries. The transformation of the bedroom from a multi-purpose, multi-occupant space to a private sanctuary dedicated exclusively to sleep represents one of history's most significant but unrecognized social revolutions. This change, occurring primarily between 1850 and 1950, required not just architectural innovation, but a complete reimagining of privacy, intimacy, and the very purpose of sleep. The modern bedroom, private, quiet, comfortable, and climate-controlled, would seem like an impossible fantasy to 99% of all humans who ever lived. The Victorian era began the bedroom revolution with a radical idea: children should sleep separately from adults. This wasn't about comfort, but about moral panic. Victorian reformers believed that children witnessing adult sexuality, even accidentally, would be psychologically damaged. The nursery was invented, a separate room where children slept under the supervision of servants rather than parents. This separation of generations during sleep had never before occurred in human history. Extended families that had slept together for warmth, protection, and bonding were suddenly divided by walls and social propriety. The American middle class took this separation further, creating the ideal of individual bedrooms for each child. This required larger houses, which required suburban expansion, which required automobiles. The bedroom revolution literally reshaped cities. The Sears Roebuck catalog of 1908 advertised house plans with a bedroom for every family member, presenting this as both modern and moral. The psychological impact was profound. For the first time, individuals could develop private selves, secret thoughts, and personal space. The teenager, as a distinct life phase with its own culture, was essentially created by the private bedroom. The marriage bed underwent its own revolution. The Victorian practice of separate bedrooms for husband and wife, common among the upper class, gave way to the companionate marriage ideal of the 1920s, where couples shared both bedroom and bed. The twin bed movement of the 1940s and 50s, promoted as hygienic and modern, briefly threatened this intimacy before the sexual revolution of the 1960s re-established the shared bed as standard. Each configuration reflected changing ideas about marriage, sexuality, and the purpose of sleep itself. The furnishing of bedrooms became a massive industry. The spring mattress, invented in 1871, promised scientific sleep. The bedroom suite matching bed, dressers, and nightstands turned the bedroom into a designed space rather than just a room with a bed. Air conditioning, spreading through American bedrooms in the 1950s, created the first truly climate-controlled sleeping environments in human history. The bedroom became a refuge not just from danger, but from discomfort itself. Yet this privatization of sleep came with unexpected psychological costs. The communal sleeping that had characterized human society created bonds and shared experiences. Children who grew up in private bedrooms reported higher rates of nighttime anxiety and fear. Adults sleeping alone for the first time experienced insomnia and paranoia that communal sleepers never faced. The very privacy we sought became a source of isolation and anxiety. The bedroom revolution solved ancient problems but created entirely new ones. The alarm clock, humanity's new predator. The invention and proliferation of the alarm clock represents one of history's cruelest ironies. After millions of years of evolution developing the ability to wake instantly at any sign of danger, humans invented a device that replicated the stress of a predator attack every single morning. The alarm clock became modernity's saber-toothed cat, triggering the same cardiovascular stress, cortisol surge, and fight-or-flight response that once helped our ancestors escape death. Except now, we subjected ourselves to this physiological trauma voluntarily, daily, to meet the demands of industrial schedules. The first alarm clocks were luxury items, status symbols for the wealthy who had important appointments. Levi Hutchins invented the first American alarm clock in 1787, but it could only ring at 4 a.m., his personal wake time. The mass-produced alarm clock introduced by Seth Thomas in 1876 democratized traumatic awakening. By 1900, alarm clocks were affordable to working-class families, becoming essential tools for maintaining industrial employment. The sound of mechanical bells ripping through sleep became the soundtrack of modern life, a daily violence we inflicted on ourselves in the name of punctuality. The physiological damage of alarm-based waking is only now being fully understood. Natural waking involves a gradual increase in cortisol, body temperature, and blood pressure over about 30 minutes. Alarm waking causes these changes to occur in seconds, creating cardiovascular stress equivalent to moderate exercise while the body is still in a vulnerable state. Studies show that people woken by alarms have higher blood pressure throughout the day, increased risk of heart disease, and impaired cognitive function compared to those who wake naturally. We essentially start each day with a stress event that our bodies interpret as life-threatening danger. The psychological conditioning created by alarm clocks fundamentally altered humanity's relationship with sleep. Pre-industrial humans woke when their bodies were ready, sleeping until sleep was complete. The alarm clock created the concept of oversleeping, framing natural sleep completion as moral failure. People began setting multiple alarms, training themselves to ignore their body's most urgent signal that sleep wasn't finished. The snooze button, invented in 1956, created a torture device that repeatedly triggered stress responses, fragmenting the final crucial period of REM sleep into useless segments. The alarm clock also created the Monday morning heart attack phenomenon. Studies show that heart attacks spike 20% on Monday mornings, particularly in the first 3 hours after waking. This isn't coincidence. It's the cumulative effect of sleep deprivation from the weekend, combining with the stress of alarm waking to create perfect conditions for cardiovascular failure. The alarm clock literally kills people, yet we've so normalized this violence that we joke about wanting to throw our alarms against the wall, not recognizing this as a rational response to a device that daily traumatizes us. The modern smartphone alarm has made things worse, not better. Now our alarm device is also our entertainment system, communication portal, and work interface. The same device that violently wakes us keeps us awake with its blue light and endless stimulation. We check our phones within minutes of waking, flooding our barely conscious brains with emails, news, and social media before we've even processed where we are. The alarm has evolved from simple sleep disruptor to complete circadian rhythm destroyer. Chapter 4: The Modern Miracle and Future of Human Sleep. The 8-hour Workday, an Accidental Sleep Revolution. The fight for the 8-hour workday wasn't originally about sleep. It was about having a life outside of work. The slogan 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will emerged from the labor movement of the 1860s. But its adoption accidentally created the first society in human history where 8 hours of sleep was both possible and expected. This standardization of sleep duration, fought for by unions and eventually enshrined in law, represents one of humanity's greatest but least recognized achievements. Before the 8-hour movement, industrial workers commonly faced 12 16-hour shifts. Steel workers in the 1890s worked 12-hour shifts 7 days a week, switching between day and night shifts weekly, a schedule that made regular sleep impossible. Textile workers, predominantly women and children, worked from dawn to dusk, then returned home to household labor. Sleep was caught in fragments between responsibilities. The lucky grabbed 4 to 5 hours. Many survived on less. Sleep deprivation was so severe that workers were known to fall asleep standing at machines, leading to horrific injuries that employers blamed on worker carelessness rather than systemic exhaustion. The first victory came in 1916 when the Adamson Act established an 8-hour day for railroad workers. Henry Ford shocked the business world by implementing 8-hour shifts at his factories in 1926, discovering that well-rested workers were dramatically more productive. By 1938, the Fair Labor Standards Act made the 40-hour workweek federal law in America. Similar laws spread globally throughout the 20th century. For the first time in human history, a large portion of humanity had legally protected time for sleep. But the 8-hour workday did more than provide time for sleep. It synchronized human sleep schedules. When everyone worked roughly 9 to 5, everyone could sleep roughly 11 to 7. This mass synchronization created what researchers call social zeitgebers, social cues that regulate biological rhythms. Television programming, designed around this schedule, reinforced it. The Late Show meant it was time to go to bed. Morning news meant it was time to wake up. Humanity had never before experienced such coordinated sleep timing, and the health benefits were immediate and dramatic. Life expectancy increased, accident rates decreased, mental health improved. The 8-hour workday, combined with the 5-day work week, another labor victory, created the weekend 2 consecutive days where workers could fully recover sleep debt. The concept of sleeping in on weekends, impossible when people worked 7 days a week, became a cherished ritual. The Sunday morning lie-in represented a luxury no previous generation of workers had experienced, the ability to sleep until your body naturally woke. Yet even as the 8-hour workday became standard, forces were already working to undermine it. Exempt employees, managers, and professionals weren't covered by hour restrictions. The rise of the service economy created pressure for extended hours. Global business meant someone had to be awake to talk to Tokyo at 3 a.m. The 8-hour workday, humanity's great sleep victory, began eroding almost as soon as it was achieved. Today, the average American works 47 hours per week, and the 8-hour sleep night remains elusive for most. The discovery of REM, understanding what we'd been missing. In 1953, Eugene Sorinsky made a discovery that revolutionized our understanding of sleep and revealed exactly what humanity had been missing throughout our sleep-deprived history. While monitoring his 8-year-old son's sleep, he noticed periods of rapid eye movement beneath closed eyelids. This REM sleep, occurring in 90-minute cycles throughout the night, but concentrated in the final hours, turned out to be crucial for emotional regulation, memory consolidation, and creativity. The discovery revealed that millions of years of disrupted sleep had been limiting human cognitive potential. REM sleep, comprising about 20–25% of adult sleep, is when the brain is most active, sometimes exceeding waking levels of neural activity. During REM, the brain replays and processes emotional experiences, integrating them into long-term memory while stripping them of their emotional charge. This is why we can remember traumatic events without reliving the trauma. REM sleep has processed and filed the experience. Without adequate REM, emotional experiences remain raw and unprocessed, leading to anxiety, depression, and PTSD. Our ancestors, constantly awakened by threats, were chronically REM deprived, living in states of perpetual emotional dysregulation. The discovery explained why sleep deprivation causes emotional instability before physical symptoms appear. Studies showed that people deprived specifically of REM sleep became paranoid, anxious, and unable to read social cues. They couldn't recognize facial expressions or understand emotional context. The amygdala, our brain's fear center, became hyperactive, while the prefrontal cortex, which regulates emotional responses, went offline. Our ancestors lived in this state constantly, hair-trigger emotional responses with minimal rational regulation. The violence and impulsivity that characterized much of human history may have been partly a symptom of chronic REM deprivation. REM sleep is also when the brain makes creative connections between disparate pieces of information. The phrase "sleep on it" reflects ancestral wisdom about problem solving, but our ancestors rarely got enough REM to fully benefit. Studies show that REM sleep helps us see patterns, understand metaphors, and make innovative leaps. The chemical composition of the brain during REM, high in acetylcholine but low in norepinephrine and serotonin, creates ideal conditions for associative thinking. The Renaissance, Enlightenment, and scientific revolution all occurred as Europeans were beginning to sleep better, thanks to improved security and comfort. This may not be coincidence. The most shocking discovery about REM was how it mapped to PTSD. Trauma victims showed disrupted REM patterns, unable to process traumatic memories. Their brains attempt to replay the trauma during REM but wake them before processing completes, trapping them in cycles of nightmares and hypervigilance. Our ancestors, living under constant threat, were essentially in states of chronic PTSD, unable to process daily traumas because they couldn't maintain REM long enough. The modern ability to sleep through multiple complete REM cycles represents a form of psychological healing unavailable to most humans throughout history. The melatonin discovery, the chemistry of darkness. The isolation of melatonin in 1958 by Yale dermatologist Aaron Lerner revealed the chemical mechanism by which darkness induces sleep, finally explaining why artificial light had such profound effects on human rest. This pineal gland hormone, released only in darkness, doesn't just make us sleepy, it orchestrates a complex cascade of biological processes that repair cellular damage, regulate immunity, and may even influence aging. The discovery showed that our ancestors, living with natural darkness, had a pharmacological advantage we've lost. Melatonin production begins about 2 hours before natural sleep time, but only in darkness. Even brief exposure to light, checking a phone, walking to the bathroom, suppresses production for hours. Our ancestors, living without artificial light, experienced robust melatonin release every night, from sunset to sunrise, bathing their bodies in this protective hormone for 10-12 hours. Modern humans surrounded by artificial light often produce melatonin for only 4 to 6 hours and at much lower levels. We've inadvertently created a society-wide hormone deficiency that affects everything from cancer risk to cognitive function. The research revealed melatonin's role as a powerful antioxidant, crossing the blood-brain barrier to protect neural tissue from oxidative damage. It stimulates the production of other antioxidants, creating cascading protective effects. Night shift workers who suppress their melatonin with artificial light show increased rates of cancer, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic disorders. The World Health Organization classified night shift work as a probable carcinogen, largely due to melatonin disruption. Our 24-hour society has created a public health crisis by interfering with this ancient hormone. Melatonin also regulates the timing of other hormones. Growth hormone, crucial for tissue repair and muscle development, is released in pulses during deep sleep, but only when melatonin levels are high. Testosterone production peaks during early morning hours, synchronized by melatonin rhythms. The hormone leptin, which suppresses appetite, and ghrelin, which stimulates it, are both regulated by melatonin. Disrupted melatonin means disrupted everything, explaining why poor sleep is linked to obesity, diabetes, and hormonal disorders. The discovery led to melatonin supplementation, but pills can't replicate natural production. Synthetic melatonin provides the sleep-inducing effect, but not the full orchestration of biological processes. It's like playing a single violin when you need a full orchestra. The only way to get melatonin's full benefits is natural darkness, something increasingly rare in our illuminated world. Light pollution means most humans never experience true darkness. Even rural areas have sky glow from distant cities. We've literally lit ourselves into hormone deficiency. The sleep science revolution, finally understanding what we need. The establishment of sleep science as a legitimate field of study in the 1970s and 80s marked humanity's first systematic attempt to understand what we'd been missing. The creation of sleep laboratories, polysomnography, and standardized sleep studies revealed the shocking extent of humanity's sleep crisis. What researchers discovered wasn't just that modern humans slept poorly, but that we had no idea what good sleep actually looked like. The normal sleep we were comparing ourselves to was already severely compromised. William Dement, the father of sleep medicine, founded the first sleep disorders clinic at Stanford in 1970. What he found shocked him. The majority of patients seeking help for insomnia actually had sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, or other physical conditions. They weren't anxious or stressed. Their bodies were repeatedly waking them for legitimate medical reasons. The scope of undiagnosed sleep disorders was staggering. Studies suggested that 70% of adults had some form of sleep disorder, most unaware that their normal sleep was actually pathological. The discovery of sleep apnea revealed another layer of the sleep crisis. This condition, where breathing repeatedly stops during sleep, affects up to 25% of adults. Throughout history, these people were simply considered bad sleepers or snorers. They lived in states of chronic exhaustion, at higher risk for heart disease and stroke, never knowing why they felt tired despite spending adequate time in bed. The invention of CPAP machines in 1980 allowed these people to experience real sleep for the first time in their lives. Patients described it as being reborn or feeling alive for the first time. Sleep studies revealed that what we considered normal sleep architecture was anything but. Healthy sleep should progress through predictable cycles of light sleep, deep sleep, and REM, each serving specific biological functions. But most people's sleep was fragmented, chaotic, missing crucial stages. Alcohol, widely used as a sleep aid throughout history, was shown to destroy REM sleep. Sleeping pills knocked people unconscious, but prevented the deep sleep necessary for physical restoration. We'd been drugging ourselves into unconsciousness and calling it sleep, like painting a car and calling it repaired. The economic impact of sleep deprivation, when finally calculated, was staggering. In the US alone, insufficient sleep costs over $400 billion annually in lost productivity, medical costs, and accidents. Sleep-deprived driving kills more people than drunk driving. Medical errors spike during doctors' long shifts. The Challenger disaster, Chernobyl, the Exxon Valdez spill, all involved sleep-deprived decision-makers. We'd built a civilization that required alertness while systematically destroying the sleep necessary to maintain it. The bedroom as medical device, optimizing for sleep. The 21st century bedroom has evolved into something unprecedented in human history, a carefully engineered environment designed specifically to optimize sleep quality. This isn't just about comfort. It's about creating conditions that allow our ancient biology to achieve the deep, restorative sleep it craves, but could never safely obtain in nature. The modern bedroom, when properly configured, is essentially a medical device for sleep therapy, more advanced than anything our ancestors could have imagined. Temperature control represents one of the most crucial innovations. Core body temperature must drop 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit to initiate sleep, and maintaining cool temperatures throughout the night improves sleep quality. Our ancestors achieved this only in specific seasons and climates. Modern HVAC systems can maintain the optimal 60 to 67 Fahrenheit sleeping temperature year-round. Smart mattresses now include cooling systems that adjust temperature throughout the night, matching the body's natural thermal rhythms. Some Olympic athletes use cooling caps that lower brain temperature, inducing deeper sleep than naturally possible. The modern mattress is a triumph of material science. Memory foam, invented by NASA in 1966, distributes pressure evenly, eliminating the pressure points that forced our ancestors to wake and shift positions throughout the night. Hybrid mattresses combine springs for support with foam for comfort, creating surfaces that maintain spinal alignment while cushioning joints. Adjustable bases allow elevation of head or feet, optimizing breathing and circulation. The $15 billion mattress industry exists because we've discovered that sleep surface quality directly impacts sleep depth and duration. Blackout technology has finally achieved what our ancestors sought in deep caves: complete darkness. Modern blackout curtains don't just block light, they're engineered with multiple layers to absorb photons. Some include white noise-generating fabrics that dampen sound. Smart glass can transition from transparent to opaque at the touch of a button. Sleep masks have evolved from simple cloth to ergonomic designs with recessed eye cups that allow REM movement without pressure. We've created portable darkness, something our ancestors would have considered magical. Sound masking represents our solution to urban noise pollution. White noise machines, first developed in the 1960s, create consistent sound that masks disruptive noises. Modern versions generate pink noise, lower frequency, or brown noise, even lower, which some studies suggest enhance deep sleep. Noise-canceling technology, originally developed for pilots, now appears in sleeping earbuds that monitor sleep stages and adjust sound accordingly. Some systems play binaural beats, slightly different frequencies in each ear, that allegedly synchronize brainwaves to sleep frequencies. The integration of technology into sleep optimization has accelerated rapidly. Sleep tracking devices monitor heart rate, movement, breathing, and even brainwaves, providing detailed analysis of sleep quality. Smart beds adjust firmness based on sleeping position. Sunrise simulation alarm clocks gradually increase light intensity, triggering natural waking processes. Apps guide meditation and breathing exercises, proven to accelerate sleep onset. The bedroom has become a data-rich environment where every aspect of sleep can be monitored and optimized. Digital destruction, how screens became the new predator. Just as humanity finally achieved the ability to sleep 8 hours safely, we invented a new predator that may be worse than anything our ancestors faced: the screen. The smartphone, tablet, computer, and television have become digital saber-toothed cats, except instead of killing us quickly, they slowly destroy our sleep from within. The blue light emitted by screens is precisely the wavelength that most powerfully suppresses melatonin production. We've essentially created portable suns that we stare at until moments before attempting sleep. The statistics are devastating. The average American spends 7 hours and 4 minutes looking at screens daily. 90% check their phones within an hour of bedtime. 75% check their phones within 5 minutes of waking. We've bookended our sleep with device usage that destroys both sleep quality and quantity. Studies show that people who use screens within an hour of bedtime take longer to fall asleep, have less REM sleep, and wake feeling less refreshed. We voluntarily adopted a behavior that replicates the sleep disruption our ancestors experienced from predator vigilance. Social media has weaponized our ancient tribal instincts against our sleep. The fear of missing out, FOMO, triggers the same vigilance systems that kept our ancestors alert to social threats. Every notification activates our stress response, cortisol spikes, heart rate increases, attention focuses. The infinite scroll exploits our foraging instincts, keeping us searching for one more dopamine hit. We lie in bed, exhausted but unable to stop scrolling, our ancient brains convinced that survival depends on checking one more update. The algorithm has become a predator that hunts our attention and devours our sleep. The content itself is designed to prevent sleep. News feeds prioritize outrageous, anger-inducing content because it generates engagement. We consume stories of disaster, conflict, and threat moments before trying to sleep. Our amygdalas, evolved to keep us vigilant against nighttime dangers, remain activated by digital threats we can neither fight nor flee from. We've created a state of perpetual psychological arousal that would have been adaptive when tigers prowled outside our caves, but is pathological when the threats are tweets and headlines. Work emails and messages have eliminated the boundary between work and rest that the 8-hour workday created. The expectation of constant availability means we never fully disengage from work stress. The sleep mode on phones is a cruel joke. We disable it to check just one thing, then find ourselves working from bed at midnight. The bedroom, fought for over millennia as a place of safety and rest, has been invaded by work through the portal of our screens. We've allowed our employers into our beds in ways that would have horrified previous generations. The impact on children is particularly tragic. Teenagers who biologically need 9-10 hours of sleep average less than 7. They go to bed with phones, wake to phones, and check phones throughout the night. Studies show that teenagers who use screens in bed have double the rate of depression and anxiety. We're raising a generation that has never experienced natural sleep, who think that lying awake scrolling is normal, who have never known the profound rest our bodies are capable of. We've given our children digital pacifiers that destroy the very sleep their developing brains desperately need. The COVID revolution, when the world discovered sleep. The COVID-19 pandemic of 2020-21 created an unintentional global experiment in sleep that revealed just how chronically sleep-deprived modern society had become. When commutes disappeared and rigid schedules relaxed, millions of people suddenly experienced what adequate sleep actually felt like. Sleep researchers called it the Great Sleep Restoration, the first time in modern history that a significant portion of humanity could sleep according to their biological needs rather than social demands. The data was remarkable. Studies showed that adults working from home gained an average of 50 minutes of sleep per night. That might not sound like much, but sleep researchers recognized it as revolutionary, equivalent to eliminating a massive sleep debt that had been accumulating since the Industrial Revolution. People reported feeling mental clarity they hadn't experienced since childhood. Creativity surged. Depression and anxiety, despite the pandemic stress, actually decreased in people who were getting adequate sleep for the first time in their lives. The elimination of commutes was the biggest factor. The average American commute of 54 minutes daily meant people were setting alarms earlier and arriving home later, bookending their days with stress and reducing sleep opportunity. During lockdown, those 54 minutes went directly to sleep, but more importantly, people could wake naturally instead of jolting awake to alarms. Studies showed that heart attack rates dropped 6% during the first lockdown, partly attributed to the reduction in stressful alarm-based waking. Remote work revealed the tyranny of the 9 to 5 schedule. When people could choose their work hours, natural chronotypes emerged. Night owls who had spent careers fighting their biology to attend 8 a.m. meetings could finally work when their brains functioned best. Early birds could start at 5 a.m. and finish by early afternoon. Productivity increased despite or because of people working fewer hours. Microsoft's data showed that the most productive remote workers were those who aligned their schedules with their natural sleep patterns. Children and teenagers experienced even more dramatic benefits, with schools starting online classes later or allowing asynchronous learning. Adolescents could finally sleep during their biological night. Teenage sleep duration increased by an average of 90 minutes. Grades improved. Behavioral problems decreased. Emergency room visits for teenage psychiatric crises dropped 25%. We discovered that much of what we labeled as teenage angst and rebellion was actually symptoms of chronic sleep deprivation imposed by early school start times. But the pandemic also revealed how fragile these gains were. As offices reopened and commutes resumed, sleep duration immediately contracted. Within months of returning to normal, population sleep had reverted to pre-pandemic levels. The Great Sleep Restoration proved that humans could achieve healthy sleep in modern society, but only by completely restructuring work and school around biological needs rather than industrial schedules. The temporary glimpse of well-rested life made returning to sleep deprivation even more painful. The future of sleep, conquering the final frontier. As we stand at the threshold of new technological revolutions, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, space colonization, the future of human sleep faces both unprecedented opportunities and existential threats. The 8-hour sleep period, so recently achieved and still so fragile, may either become universal or disappear entirely. The choices we make in the next decades about sleep will fundamentally determine what kind of species we become. Sleep optimization technology is advancing at breathtaking pace. Brain-computer interfaces are being developed that could monitor sleep in real time and make micro-adjustments to optimize each sleep stage. Imagine a system that could detect when you're entering deep sleep and subtly adjust room temperature, sound, and even electromagnetic fields to enhance that stage. Or technology that could identify when a nightmare is beginning and intervene with targeted stimulation to redirect the dream. These aren't science fiction. Prototypes exist in laboratories today. Pharmaceutical enhancement of sleep is moving beyond simple sedatives to drugs that could enhance specific sleep stages. Researchers are developing compounds that increase deep sleep in elderly people whose natural deep sleep has declined. Others are working on REM enhancers that could compress the creative and emotional benefits of REM into shorter periods. The military is investigating drugs that could allow soldiers to compress 8 hours of sleep benefits into 4 hours. The ethical implications are staggering. If some people could get full restoration from half the sleep, would natural sleepers become economically obsolete? Genetic engineering presents even more radical possibilities. Scientists have identified genes that control sleep need. The DEC2 gene mutation allows some people to feel fully rested on 4 to 6 hours of sleep with no health consequences. CRISPR technology could theoretically give this mutation to anyone. Future parents might choose to engineer children who need less sleep, giving them 20% more wakeful life. But we don't fully understand sleep's role in consciousness, creativity, and humanity itself. Would humans who don't need sleep still be human in the way we understand it? Space colonization will force us to confront sleep in environments where our evolution is meaningless. Mars has a 24.7-hour day, close enough to Earth that our circadian rhythms could adjust. But what about space stations with 90-minute orbits, seeing 16 sunrises daily, or generation ships where we might need to hibernate for decades? Some researchers propose that space colonization will require engineering humans who don't need traditional sleep at all, perhaps entering periodic torpor states like hibernating animals. Climate change threatens to make quality sleep a luxury good. As temperatures rise, the global poor, who can't afford air conditioning, will face increasingly difficult sleep conditions. Heat waves already cause mass sleep deprivation that leads to increased mortality, violence, and accidents. The global North's ability to maintain cool sleeping environments, while the global South suffers, could create a sleep inequality that translates into cognitive and health disparities. Wars might be fought not over water or food, but over access to climates that allow restorative sleep. Conclusion: the miracle we take for granted. As you lie in bed tonight, preparing for what you hope will be 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep, take a moment to appreciate the absolute miracle of your situation. You're about to do something that would have seemed godlike to your ancestors. Sleep safely, comfortably, and completely through an entire night. No predators will attack you. No cold will freeze you. No parasites will invade you. No tribe member will accidentally kick you. You will simply close your eyes and trust that you'll wake 8 hours later, refreshed and restored. This ability didn't come easily or naturally. It required millions of years of evolution, thousands of years of technological development, and centuries of social progress. Every wall around you represents a victory over predation. Every lock secures a battle won against violence. Your mattress embodies materials science that would seem like magic to previous generations. The temperature control that keeps you comfortable required understanding of thermodynamics that emerged only recently. The quiet that allows you to sleep demanded urban planning and noise regulations fought for by generations of activists. The 8-hour sleep period itself is a social construction that required massive political and economic struggles. Workers literally died fighting for the 8-hour workday that made 8 hours sleep possible. Scientists devoted careers to understanding what sleep is and why we need it. Doctors developed treatments for the disorders that disrupt it. Engineers created the technologies that optimize it. You are the beneficiary of countless humans who suffered through terrible sleep so that someday, their descendants, you might sleep peacefully. Yet this miracle remains fragile and incomplete. 2/3 of adults in developed nations don't get the recommended 8 hours. In developing nations, the number is even worse. Shift workers, new parents, caregivers, the anxious, the sick, billions of humans still struggle to achieve what should be a basic biological right. The very technologies that enable good sleep for some, electric light, climate control, security systems, remain unavailable to most of humanity. We've conquered the night for the privileged few, while the majority still fight ancient battles against heat, noise, and insecurity. The future of human sleep hangs in balance. We could be on the verge of universal perfect sleep, where every human can achieve optimal rest regardless of circumstance. Or we could be entering a post-sleep future where economic pressures and technological possibilities eliminate sleep entirely. The choice isn't just about health or productivity, it's about what kind of species we want to be. Sleep isn't just downtime, It's when our brains integrate experience into wisdom, process trauma into acceptance, transform information into creativity. Without adequate sleep, we're not fully human. So tonight, as you perform the routine that seems so ordinary, brushing teeth, setting alarm, turning off lights, climbing into bed, remember that you're participating in one of humanity's greatest achievements. The 8 hours of sleep you're about to attempt represents a victory over nature, over predation, over disease, over exploitation, and over our own biology. It's a miracle that previous generations fought, suffered, and died to achieve. Honor their sacrifice by protecting your sleep, by fighting for others' right to sleep, and by never taking for granted the profound gift of safe, peaceful rest. The story of human sleep is far from over. We stand at a crossroads where sleep could become universal or obsolete. The choices we make now about work schedules, school times, technology use, urban planning, and social priorities will determine whether future generations look back at 8 hour sleep as a quaint historical phase or as humanity's greatest achievement. The miracle of 8 hour sleep isn't just that we can do it, but that we've created a world where it's possible. The question now is whether we'll protect this miracle or let it slip away in pursuit of productivity, profits, and progress that might cost us our humanity itself. Sweet dreams are not just a pleasant wish, they're a revolutionary act, a biological rebellion, and a nightly miracle that your ancestors could never have imagined. Sleep well, for in doing so you honor millions of years of evolution, thousands of years of civilization, and hundreds of years of struggle that made your peaceful night possible. The 8 hours ahead of you are not just rest, they're the culmination of humanity's longest journey, from terrified tree dweller to peaceful bedroom sleeper. That journey, that victory, that miracle happens every single night in your bed. And tomorrow night, if we're wise enough to protect it, the miracle will happen again.